Library. This event was, our Zoom is made possible by the Friends of the Larkspur Library. They helped us pay for our license so we could do this. And then, so let me stop my share. But again, thank you all for joining us today. We're here with Ron Rosano, our Solar System Ambassador. And if you've been with us before, you know that Ron has done a couple of different space programs for us, but I've been really excited about having this one because Ron's here to talk about the new space race and what's really been going on. And we're really lucky to have Ron with us. He was just recently at one of these, at the launch of one of the events that he'll be talking about tonight. But so without further ado, here's Ron Rosano. I'm going to hand this over to you, Ron.
Thanks, Franklin. How are you hearing me?
No, you're coming in through good. So you can use the spotlight. And then I'm going to disappear now. So.
Well, thanks all of you for being here, and thanks Franklin and Teresa at Larkspur Library for setting this up. I'm really excited to be joining you and really excited to be talking about these most recent space flights by Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic. So I'm gonna jump right into the presentation here, and let's see, one second. I'm not seeing my share correctly here.
Yeah, you're on the, well, you're on the screen.
There we go. Yep, good. No, just waiting for the right window to pop up as an option here. So here we go. So seeing that all okay?
Yes.
Great. So this is a really exciting time in space flight. For the first time ever, people from all over the world are able to buy a ticket, can buy a ticket to fly into space. And I'm going to go into some detail about how are they doing that. There's two companies, Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin, that have started commercial space flights. And before we go into some of those, I'll give you a little background on how we've gone to space in history and how the whole landscape is changing for spaceflight in the next few years. So for 60 years, and there's only been really these 5 rockets that have brought people to space. And there's been about 580 people total in space in history. And that's all changing now. Last year and this year, NASA's flying 2 new vehicles. You've probably seen the SpaceX Crew Dragon that's taken 3 different groups of people up into orbit and to the space station. Their latest capsule is docked to the space station right now. The Boeing Starliner is also funded by NASA, and they're flying a second version of that within a month or 2. So that's going to be a new way to get to space. And those are both in orbit. But what's different is the Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin have started suborbital flights. So they don't go nearly as high. You're only in space for a brief moment of time, but for a few minutes of time. But you do get the experience of being weightlessness and having spectacular views of the Earth. Past that, and coming up soon, very soon, SpaceX has also launching commercial flights where people, private citizens have bought tickets to go into orbit. Later this year, perhaps as early as September, the Inspiration 4 crew is going to go in orbit on a SpaceX vehicle. Another company called Axiom has planned 2 missions, one early next year, one later, that are going to fly private citizens to the space station into orbit. And then a few years down the line, the Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa has purchased a flight on SpaceX Starship that's planning to go to the moon, and he wants to bring 8 people, and not professional astronauts, but artists and poets and musicians. So that's a very big change in people going to space. Beyond that, NASA's developed this enormous rocket called the SLS. They expect to fly that within, I think the first flight's maybe 6 months or so away. And then SpaceX Starship is, I think the first version is on the launch pad in Texas, and we should see that going in the first 6 months too. So after a long period of just a few ways to get to space, SpaceX and other companies are opening up a whole new era of space travel. We're going to focus today just on the most recent events and the suborbital flights of Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin. So I'll start first with Galactic and start with a picture of their spaceship Unity. This is February 2016 when they rolled it out of the hangar. And here's a great photo with all the engineers and people that built and have tested Unity. So it gets into space with a hybrid rocket. And it's very different from what you see in most rockets, but there's two parts to this. First, you can see in the upper picture, there's a tank, and that's filled with nitrous oxide, also known as laughing gas. When that's in the second portion is a solid fuel, a solid rubber called HTPB that's mounted in that cylinder. And this cylinder of rubber fuel is loaded into the back of the spaceship, and that rocket motor is actually the only part that gets replaced for every flight. So all the rest of the system is used. When you combine that nitrous and with the solid rubber, you get rocket power. The spaceship does not take off by itself. This is Spaceship 2. It's actually mounted under the wing of the White Knight 2. It's a particularly constructed only just to fly spaceship. It looks like two planes, but it's actually one very long wing with space for the spaceship in the middle and two fuselages or two airplane bodies. Here's the portions of the Galactic flight. They're kind of in the lower left. You see where the spaceship is mounted to the White Knight 2, and the spaceship, the White Knight releases the spaceship, and the spaceship flies up under its own power, burns the rocket for about a minute, and then after the rocket's burned out, they flip the spaceship over on its back. So as it's going up in the air, it's belly up with windows on the roof or in the roof of the spaceship, so the passengers inside can look down and see the Earth fading away from them. The spaceship continues up to the peak of its altitude in that configuration, and after it starts on its way down, they flip the spaceship back over, and it glides to a landing on the same runway that it took off from. That runway is in Spaceport, New Mexico. This is a beautiful building built by the state of New Mexico out southeast of Albuquerque. It's a high elevation, and they get clear weather 300 plus days per year. And they also have they have airspace clearance because they're right next to White Sands Missile Range. So it's an ideal location to fly into space. And that's exactly what they did on July 11th with this crew. This is the crew of Unity 22. It gets that name because it's the 22nd flight of the spaceship Unity. And this was flown by two pilots, Dave Mackay on the far left, Mike Masucci on the far right. You might recognize Richard Branson, their right of center. And along with him, he had Beth Moses, who's on her second space flight. She's a 20-year, spent 20 years with NASA as an engineer on space station components, and she's the cabin evaluator and chief astronaut trainer. To her right, next to Mackay, is Colin, I just blanked his name. Colin, an engineer for Galactic, and between just to Richard's left is Sirisha Bandla. She's a vice president, Colin Bennett, sorry. And Sirisha Bandla is a vice president for government relations for Galactic in Washington. And she's actually the second Indian-born woman ever to fly into space. So let's take a look at their flight. This was July 11th, so less than 2 weeks ago. This is how they look at takeoff from the runway in Spaceport. This is a sequence of what it looks like releasing the plane. This is actually an earlier flight, but this shows you what it looks like after the spaceship gets released. And it looks like it's falling here, but it's actually, when they're flying, you know, 400 miles an hour in flat level flight. And when they release the spaceship, the white knight actually rises up away from it. After a moment or two after being released, the pilots light the rocket motor, and the spaceship flies vertically until it breaks the sound barrier and then points itself straight up to gain as much altitude as they can. Once the motor burns out, you get a view looking down. So this is a view from July 11th, looking down at the Rio Grande Valley. That's the Rio Grande running across the top of the picture from side to side. And you can see you're well above the ground and above, well above altitudes that you'd see that you fly on a commercial jet. They're at about 120,000 feet there. Once the rocket motor shuts off, everyone inside is weightless. And here's a shot of Richard floating around once the rocket motor finished. Here's Sarisha at the window. That's one thing that's a little different about Galactic compared to Blue Origin, is that because the spaceship can flip upside down, the passengers inside are able to look down at the Earth, or they can go to the side windows and look off into the distance. As they get closer to apogee, the very highest point, they come to a complete stop. And I've talked to Beth Moses about that, and she explains that as a very peaceful moment. You're going fast, it's loud when the rocket burns, and then it goes quiet. And then you just come to the top of your flight path, and the spaceship comes to a quiet stop before it starts to fall back down. That's White Sands National Monument there at the top center, all that, the white spot there. While it's on its way down, the spaceship configures itself in a really different configuration. The inventor of the design figured out that if they fold tail booms on the spaceship up, they're guaranteed that the spaceship comes down in the orientation that they want and will never come down sideways or backwards, just because of the dynamics of the airflow. They always come down the way they want. They don't have to worry about having computers or pilots to turn the plane a certain way. And this also presents the belly of the spaceship into the atmosphere, where it gets the most effective reduction in velocity. As the spaceship gets closer to the ground, they fold the tail booms back and it becomes a glider. So the spaceship is technically a rocket-powered glider. And after about an hour and a quarter or so, the spaceship lands back on the runway in New Mexico. This is a picture from the landing on the 11th. And here's a photo I took after it had been on the ground a little while. And you could see the spaceship parked outside of Spaceport. One of the unique designs of Spaceport is the windows that are very reflective. So they present a beautiful scene of the spaceship. They're reflected in the mirror with White Knight parked behind it. So that's a brief overview of how that all works. And I'm going to go into a short 3-minute video from that flight. So, and I'll let those pictures and things speak for themselves.
5, 3, 2, 1, release. Fire.
Welcome to witnesses, you're clear to unstrap. Welcome to space.
To all you kids down there, I was once a child with a dream, looking up to the stars. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship with lots of other wonderful adults looking down to our beautiful, beautiful Earth. To the next generation of dreamers, if we can do this, just imagine what you can do.
All right, everybody, look out the window. Don't miss apogee.
Oh my God.
Be quiet.
Woo! Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, this is unbelievable. This is too unbelievable. Ah. Wow. Oh, unbelievable. You are the man.
And please return to your seats and strap in. Approaching re-entry.
Okay.
Get back up.
So that was a great day. Just a week ago Sunday. Full disclosure, I bought a ticket to fly with Virgin Galactic back in 2010, and I've worked very closely with them over the years to talk to students about space, and I've organized video conferences with people that work for Galactic and students all over the world. So it was great. It was very great that I felt very lucky that they invited me and about 60 other future astronauts down to New Mexico to see the flight in person. So let's move on with Blue Origin. And I'm gonna just have another 10 or 15 minutes, and I'd like to plan to leave a lot of time open at the end for questions and discussion. I'd really like to hear about from everyone, all of you there, your impressions of this and what you think about it, and like to have lots of questions. So look at Blue Origin. You probably saw in the headlines Tuesday that they flew into space with a crew for the first time. So this is the Blue Origin rocket. This is the new Shepard. It's named after Alan Shepard, who was the first American to fly into space, who also flew on a suborbital flight. So this is a fully reusable system. The rocket lands in this particular configuration that they flew on Tuesday. Was the third time for that rocket and capsule combination to fly into space. But this was the first time they flew with people. Their flight profile is, besides other than different components, it's very, very similar to Virgin Galactic. They go to very close to the same altitude and have about the exact same amount of weightless time while they're in space. And they land, the booster lands very close to the launch site, and the capsule not far away. So that's really contained in a small area in West Texas. And ironically, it's only about 170 miles away from spaceport in New Mexico, where Virgin Galactic flies. So whichever you might choose to fly on, the views won't really be that different, other than cloud cover. So here's the inside of the Blue Origin capsule. There's no pilots on board. It's fully automated, with room for 6 passengers. That cylinder in the middle is an escape system, so that if there's an issue with the booster down below, they could fire the motor, the rocket that's there contained within the capsule, and have a successful escape from the booster. And they've actually tested that system, and it worked great during that test. Here's the rocket for the Blue Origin, New Shepard. It's more what you'd think of as a conventional rocket. It's supercooled hydrogen and oxygen, and it operates at very dynamic temperatures, high pressure, a lot different from the Virgin Galactic hybrid rocket. So here's the crew of the New Shepard. That's Jeff Bezos in the middle. His on the left, his brother Mark, and sitting down is Wally Funk. She is the oldest person ever to fly into space. She has a wonderful history in aviation. She's actually signed up to fly with Galactic as well, and I've talked to her at a couple Galactic events. She's a wonderfully enthusiastic person, and it was really generous of Jeff Bezos to fly her on this flight as his guest. The other person standing to Jeff's left is Oliver Damon. He's actually the youngest person ever to fly into space. His father is a venture capitalist in the Netherlands and had bought a ticket for a subsequent Blue Origin flight, but got bumped up to this flight. So not only did Jeff Bezos fly on Tuesday, but he flew the youngest person ever to fly into space, as well as the oldest. So let's have a look at what that day looked like. There's the crew ascending the stairs at the launch tower with Wally leading the way. They wait for a few moments in a room there that's on the right before they cross the tower and get in the capsule. So here's a view about 15 minutes before launch and at launch. They lifted off very early in the morning. After about just 17 seconds of flight, they're approaching 1,000 feet. And after a minute of flight, they're about 24,000 feet, almost as high as a commercial jet, and going 575 miles an hour. So after about 2 minutes of flight, they're up to 117,000 feet at almost 2,000 miles an hour. And at 2 minutes and 20 seconds, they cut off the rocket engine. So that's where they reach their maximum speed. And the booster in the capsule, after that, they float up like the Virgin Galactic flight, up into their apogee, and they start to come back down. So once the rocket cuts off, they're all weightless inside. So they unstrap from their seats, and then you can see the 4 of them enjoying their weightless time inside with Wally stuck to the ceiling there. About a minute and a half after engine cut off, the capsule is reaches apogee. The booster is separated by this point, and they attained an altitude of about 350,000 feet, which is higher than Virgin Galactic went. As they're coasting down, they're still weightless. And here's an image of Jeff Bezos enjoying the view with his cowboy boots floating inside the capsule. The booster lands about 7 minutes after takeoff, and the capsule comes down after about 10 minutes. So after about 9 minutes of flight, the booster's going about 16 miles an hour, just over 2,000 feet, and hits the ground softly with some rocket engines in the bottom to cushion it at the last moment after about a 10-minute flight. So obviously a lot of joy and celebration there on the ground. That's Jeff Bezos hugging his mother, who was out there for the flight, and Wally, after years of hoping to fly into space, is elated. She actually signed up to and applied to be a Mercury astronaut in the early 1960s, and was one of the 13 women that ran through many of the Mercury astronaut tests. She did exceptionally well, but NASA decided that they weren't going to fly women. There was only going to be men brought in as Mercury astronauts. So she'd been hoping to fly to space ever since. And She has also a really accomplished pilot. She has over 19,000 hours piloting a variety of different aircraft. So she's a lifelong aviator. So let's take a quick look at Blue Origin's flight. So here's a 3-minute video of how that went on Tuesday.
Command and start. 2, 1.
First up, your booster has landed. Stand by drogue.
Touchdown. Touchdown. As you can hear, more cheering here.
This is the first step. This is a tiny little step of what Blue Origin is going to do. And what we're really trying to do is build reusable space vehicles. It's the only way to build a road to space. And we need to build a road to space so that our children can build the future. And what that's all about is this planet, and you can see it. When we're up there, you see how tiny this planet's atmosphere is. You know, here it seems big. You look around, it's all around you, and but it's really the small thing supporting all life. So we need to take all polluting industry, all heavy industry, and move it off Earth. This is going to take many decades, but that's what we can do if we have reusable space vehicles. And so this suborbital tourism mission lets us practice that. So we need to do that over and over and over and get as good at running space vehicles as we are as a civilization at running commercial airliners. And then we can have, you know, this dynamic civilization of the future, a better world for all of our kids.
So I'm going to close with just a few reasons why, you know, I think this is important. Yeah, not only will the two companies fly people, but they'll also be flying science experiments. There really has not been a lot of research done in the suborbital regime because there really haven't been any suborbital rockets until lately. And, you know, there's been a lot of work in orbit. There's been a lot of work on high altitude balloons at 100,000 feet. But this is a great opportunity for both companies to offer, and they are offering universities and researchers time in microgravity or weightlessness that comes at a much smaller price than what they could get by flying into orbit. So they've both actually flown NASA experiments so far. So that's the Blue Origin capsule on the right and a configuration of Galactic on the left. There's a great focus from both companies about inspiring students in STEM. Blue Origin's Club for the Future has flown thousands of postcards from students all over the world. They've invited students to send them postcards, and then they fly them. They've flown them on several of the New Shepard flights. While this was the first crewed flight for Blue Origin, this was actually the 16th time that they've flown into space. So they've had great success in getting that capsule into suborbital space. I've been working with Galactic Unite since we started in 2010, and that's an initiative of Virgin Galactic to inspire students into STEM careers and STEM education. So like I mentioned, I organize these video chats and have Q&A with students, but there's also future astronauts that have donated, that have funded scholarships. There on the right, there's two of my fellow future astronauts and the San Diego Rocket Club. They've funded students in a rocket club in San Diego, and Galactic Unite's also involved in giving grants to people helping students. So everyone really thinks that it's going to be not just for the people that are on the flight, but helping people all over the world. And a very big part of it is, yes, it'll be a thrill for us that are going on the flight, but the idea that hundreds and then thousands of people will travel into space, see the Earth from up above the atmosphere, will be transformative. Galactic has they actually have more people signed up, about 600, than have ever been in space in history. And Blue Origin is in the process of filling out their next flights. Blue expects to fly 2 more flights this year. Galactic's going to do 2 more test flights this year, and then have its first commercial passengers. They're expecting the first quarter of next year. So these next 12 months are going to be a big time and a big change and a big transformation. And this is my last image before I go to Q&A, but I really do want to emphasize what you heard Jeff Bezos say is the thinness of the atmosphere. It's remarkably thin layer across the globe. An equivalent, if you had a regular 12-inch globe, the thickness of the atmosphere would be equivalent to the thickness of a paperclip on the globe. So having more people aware of that and wanting to help the Earth and do good things for the Earth will change things in a really positive way. So with that, I'd like to move to Q&A and discussion. And I'd like to hear from anyone that would like to ask some questions or, raise some points. Franklin, did you want to have a look at questions or anything?
I'm waiting for people to pop your questions in the Q&A or in the chat box. I can relay them. I have a question for myself. Is that I think when you talked about Blue Origin's little escape pod, that's a huge improvement. I mean, somebody like myself who remembers the Challenger disaster and some of the other shuttle disasters that have happened in my lifetime, they're really thinking about safety and how we can, as a commercial flyer, be safe as we fly. And you've seen that development, correct?
Yes. And the Challenger and the Space Shuttle did not have that option. They didn't have an abort system like that. So that was something I think that was very essential to Blue Origin. I can't speak for them, personally, but my sense is that was a big part of, their design, is they wanted to have that, capability to escape in case there was something wrong with the rocket.
So one of our first question is, did Blue Origin need FAA approval?
Yeah, thanks for that, Vivian. Good to have you on. I believe they did. They got, the FAA oversees all these commercial flights. So both Galactic and Blue needed to have a certain kind of permitting or license to operate by the FAA before they brought people into space like that. So
So how fast do you personally think they will be able to scale their fleet to hit their goal of 400 flights per spaceport per year? Do you think they will be able to meet this in the timeline they specify?
Thanks for that, Gordon. Yeah, you're right. Virgin Galactic did say earlier this year that their goal is to be able to fly 400 flights per year per spaceport. And that's a very ambitious goal, and it was more than I expected. They had talked for years about flying 2 carrier planes and 5 spacecraft. Not sure how many how many flights per year that would turn out to be, but when they after they went public and brought in a new CEO, they kind of reimagined what their capabilities. So they brought in some very experienced people. I spoke to Swami Iyer, who's had a long history in aerospace when I was in New Mexico, and they're in the process of figuring out how to manufacture many more spaceships. So it's hard to say how soon they'd be able to hit that, but I'm sure that if they're thinking that they can, then I'm sure they'll be aiming for that. They have a couple more spaceships already constructed and coming online. And yeah, I can go right into that second question about updates on Imagine. I think it'll be, although I think it'll be a few years before, several years before they can get to 400. But it is, they can scale that out and fly these space flights from most anywhere in the world. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in 5 years, 10 years as that starts to play out. Then we have a question about any updates on VSS Imagine. Yes, Virgin Galactic debuted earlier this year their second spaceship called VSS Imagine, and that's rolled out of the manufacturing facility in Mojave and undergoing ground testing there. They haven't had any flight tests with it, but I think they've said that they expect to start flight tests later this year. They'll start first by carrying it under white night and just seeing how they perform, while they're linked together in the air. Then they'll have drop tests and let Imagine glide back down to see how it performs by itself. And then they'll have rocket power tests and then bring it into commercial service. Maybe a year and a half, maybe probably less than 2 years from now. And then there's a third spaceship. I can't remember the name of it right now. Imagine Inspiration. That's near the end of construction in Mojave. So within a couple of years, it seems like they're expecting to have 3 operational spaceships. And it's hard to say what their flight cadence might be, but yeah, be something to follow. Thank you, D. Yes, Spaceship 3 is named Inspire. So yeah, so it's Unity and Imagine and Inspire. So thank you.
So the next one, what are your thoughts on their proposed profit margins of, I think it was 70%? Is this realistic?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that actually, that they had a proposed profit margin of 70%. So I don't think I could comment on that. I'm really, I'm really just a customer of theirs. So it's, yeah, that's more than I've seen. But they do have a lot of financial disclosures that's part of being a public company. So anybody who's read this could probably have a little better idea of that.
But where else is Virgin Galactic building spaceports at?
So they haven't announced any. I know they've talked, they had done some, they had a partner in Dubai and in one of the United Arab Emirates. So that seemed to me maybe one of the more likely places to start with a second spaceport. You know, it's clear weather. There's, I think, a lot of people that would want to fly into space there. But I think for now they seem to be concentrating on just, you know, building out in New Mexico.
So when asked, what song is #1 on your morning of flight playlist?
Oh, that's a great question. I haven't gotten that far. Something inspirational and surprising. I'm not quite sure. My turn wouldn't be till I've had, you know, several dozen flights. So I'll have a couple of years to sort that out.
So how long have you been waiting for this, Ron? When did you get your ticket?
Yeah, I signed up in 2010.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, I really expected that, you know, this would all be happening sooner, but it's been a lot more difficult than they thought, especially with the rocket motor development. The first people bought their tickets around 2006, 2007. There's a group of astronauts that are called the founder astronauts. There's about, I think, 80 of them. And those will be the first to fly, you know, next year, you know, if they meet that schedule. So roughly I wouldn't fly till maybe around their 50th flight. So I have a ways to go. And Derek, I see your question. Have I signed up for Blue Origin as well? I have thought very seriously about that. I have looked into, you know, their tickets, but I'm at this point, I don't think I'm ready to do both. So, but it is intriguing. There is someone will be the first person to fly on both, and that'll be an interesting experience. Actually, I think a better complement to a Virgin Galactic flight, rather than flying Blue Origin, would be a company called Space Perspective. They're flying a capsule under a helium-filled balloon to about 100,000 feet, where they can drift for about 2 hours. And you're well above most of the atmosphere there. You know, even at 40 miles up, you're above about 99.99% of the volume of the atmosphere. So you get a really good perspective, even, you know, at 100,000 feet. That it's actually a much less expensive thing than riding a rocket. It's not a rocket ride, but you do get a more contemplative time floating above the Earth. So I think that would be a great complement to either Blue or Galactic.
So I think you answered if you didn't know when you're going to fly yet, so you still don't know.
Yeah, probably a few years, I'm thinking. Yeah.
And then someone's interested to know your personal thoughts of the Blue Origin experience versus Virgin Galactic's. What are your reaction thoughts from your friends, family on which they prefer?
Oh, yeah. I definitely have some bias from being involved with Virgin Galactic for so long. In these space chats or video conferences I organize, I've gotten to meet, you know, more than 100 of the Virgin Galactic engineers and pilots and people that work there. And they've included me and all the other future astronauts kind of as family in the group. And Blue Origin has taken a very different approach. Is that they're steady, they're working on developing their rocket and their capability, and haven't reached out nearly as much. So it's been a little, I haven't really had the opportunity to get to know them as well. But one thing you may have picked up on that's different is that Jeff Bezos, as he was talking about, is very focused on building and creating the infrastructure and capability of taking payloads to space. He has another rocket called New Glenn, named after John Glenn, that's aiming to go into orbit. So they can apply all these new Shepard technologies to their New Glenn, which hasn't flown yet. And he's focused on kind of establishing you know, that capability of bringing more and more payload to orbit. Galactic hasn't really focused on going to orbit at all. It's more on providing a exceptional experience for the people that go on their flights. And there's been a lot of work on how they can have all of us future astronauts do something beyond our flight. I mean, yes, it'll be the thrill of a lifetime for us when we fly, but really some of the most important things will happen after. And we're working on, I've talked to them about, how do you get people to take their flight and really, leverage it to do some, real good in the world, to have some inspiration for students. There's about 30 or more people that have signed up with Galactic. That'll be the first man or woman from their respective country to fly into space. And it's hard to, you can't really guess as to what kinds of things those people can do when you're the first woman to fly into space from Romania, and like what kind of things you could do within your country to inspire students and, those kinds of things. So that to me is exciting. Is like one of the most exciting aspects, is like what's going to happen after more people start flying, and we won't see that until the next few years. So really exciting part of it. And then let's see, there's another question about, will Galactic be servicing 4 or 6 passengers per trip? Yeah, they have the capability of flying 6, but from what I understand, the Spaceship Unity is going to fly 4 people per ship. And then the later ships, Imagine and Inspiration, were actually, they took the time to refine the manufacturing techniques, and actually they've said that those 2 ships are 1,000 pounds lighter than VSS Unity. So Unity is about 30,000 pounds. So that weight difference will make a difference in how high they go. But really, I don't see so much of a difference in the altitude. Yes, Blue Origin does go higher, but really the atmosphere is pretty much just as thin at 50 miles as it is at 60 miles. And, each has about the same amount of time of weightlessness. So I see Gordon's asking, do I own Virgin Galactic shares? Yes, I did buy several shares of Galactic, just because I wanted to be involved and supportive in that way. And what are my thoughts on their recent share dilution timing immediately after the Branson flight? And do I think their timing was good? Yeah, that's hard to say. I'm not a sophisticated investor in individual stocks, and I don't really look at the stock market in that way. So, not really a part of that decision making. So I can't really comment in an informed way about the dilution of the stock, or their motives for that. So
do you think Virgin Galactic can use existing concepts of their carrier plane and space plane for a hypersonic point-to-point travel, or will it require other technology entirely?
Oh, definitely. They'll most definitely use their expertise, and can use their expertise in developing point-to-point technology. And just what that involves is, instead of pointing a spaceship straight up and coming back down, you can angle it a little bit and fly over an ocean. So you could go from the west coast of the US to Asia in maybe an hour or 2. And they have talked about developing, Richard Branson has talked specifically about, developing point-to-point travel. And I think there may be people that are Galactic working on it. They've also Galactic's partnered with a company called Boom Supersonic in developing next generation supersonic aircraft. So all the engineers that they have, a lot of their expertise can translate into those different kinds of projects.
So what are your thoughts on the Kármán line?
That's a great question, and I've thought a lot about the Kármán line. the Kármán line is actually kind of an agreed upon boundary at 100 kilometers, where most countries say, okay, once you get to 100 kilometers, you're in space. There's been really good and interesting and in-depth analysis by a guy named Jonathan McDowell. And he's looked into von Karman's work, and von Karman actually concluded that the Kármán line should be somewhere closer to 80 or 90 kilometers and not 100. It was actually a third party, someone else that said, okay, we'll make it 100. And that's just a nice round number. But looking at the detail, there's several reasons for arguing that 80 miles is a very, or 80 kilometers is a very reasonable level to call that space. You know, spacecraft can actually be in stable orbits at under 100 kilometers, at 85 or 90 kilometers. So you can argue that really you can fly in space at a lower amount. And if you look at the numbers, calculating the atmosphere at 51 miles, you're above about 99.996% of the atmosphere, and at 60 miles you're above 99.9996. So it's just a tiny difference, and you know, I don't think the view is that different from up there. It would make more of a difference if you had 8 minutes of weightless time versus 2 minutes of weightless time, or something like that, because that's the real thing. So. And overview effect. Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a fabulous concept and a fabulous idea. I've got connected with Frank White, who wrote the book, The Overview Effect, and the last few months have been meeting with an overview roundtable group weekly since then. And Frank White is very keen on this idea of overview effect. He coined the term back in the 80s, I think, and realized that people going into space are going to have a different view of the Earth. It's a conceptual, it's a cognitive shift in your realization of how you exist on the planet and how the planet exists in space. And you know, you see it in most all the astronauts that come back talk about it in different ways. Some more affected than others, but some astronauts are significantly affected. One example is Edgar Mitchell, who flew to the moon on Apollo 14. And when he was coming back from the moon, most of his duties were done. And he had an epiphany of realizing his place in the universe and how the molecules that form in our bodies and form, you know, raw materials and metals all came from exploded stars. And he experienced a realization of the planet and of himself and of people that was profound for him. And I don't think you'll get quite that experience on a suborbital flight, but in Virgin Galactic's press conference on the 11th, one of the pilots, Mike Masucci, did talk about the overview effect, and he felt that, yeah, he experienced that, you know, in a certain way. And he was a U-2 pilot. He flew, you know, many missions at, you know, 60, 70,000 feet. So he'd spent a lot of time at higher altitude, but had a different realization of the Earth after flying on Unity. And I think this was his second or third space flight on Spaceship Two. So that you know, goes along with, you know, the realization of, you know, people are, you know, we're on this planet together. The most important border is the border between air and space. And when you're looking down at the Earth, you don't see those country borders. And people really think that you can solve, you know, some of Earth's most challenging problems if you could go beyond borders and start working together. So that's, I think, another great effect of what's happening. So let's see, we have time for just a couple more questions. And Derek, thank you. After watching Branson go up, are you even more excited to go up now? Yes, especially. I wish I had bought my ticket, you know, 3 years early and could be going up next year. And from watching the video, did it meet your expectations of what the experience will be like? Yes, I think exceeded expectations. Do I think they delivered on promise they made to you and other early customers of what it'll be like? Yes, absolutely. I think probably as high as you might have expectations, to actually float there and look back on the Earth, you can't imagine what it'll be. You know, I've talked to Beth a couple of times about what it was like for her on her first space flight. That was back in February 2019. And as much as she was focused on space and had a career in space, seeing the Earth and from up there was a profound change for her. And you know, she talks about it, and you know, it affected her deeply and emotionally. Her flight took place over California when they were flying out of Mojave, and it was snowy in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And when they got up near apogee, she was looking down, and the sunlight sparkling off the snow in the mountains, and she describes it as it looked like the Earth was wearing her diamonds for her that day. So she's a great person to have as an astronaut trainer. So is the ticket I purchased back in 2010 fully refundable? Can I cancel without penalty? Not sure if you paid deposit or paid in full. Yes, all the tickets are fully refundable. Galactic has said, you know, they're in an escrow account. There have been people that have asked for their money back, and you know, I've talked to a couple of them and said, yeah, it's like not an issue. I think they might take a small fee, but yeah, for the most part, it all comes back to you anytime you want it. And I did pay in full back in 2010. Back then, they had a program where you could put 10% down and have a space farther back in line. So there are a number of people that are in that group too. Will future iterations such as the Delta class spaceships reach higher apogees or reach the Kármán line? Hard to say. Galactic has announced that they're developing in their next class, which they're calling the Delta class, group of Spaceship Twos, and I think they would like to reach the Kármán line, but I think as they fly more often, we'll get an impression from the people that fly about what their experience is like. I'm not so worried about the certain definition of it, but more about what the experience is before, during, and after as well. So, and then Derek, you're excited for me and everyone else who's signed up so long ago to realize space dreams and ambitions. Thank you. It is really exciting it was fabulous to be in New Mexico and to see the flight happen. They had about 500 people there at Spaceport, about 60 future astronauts plus press and guests. And they brought in a class of students from Las Cruces Middle School that I got to meet with and talk to while they were out there. So they're really focused on trying to make the best of it. And thank you. I think it's exciting for everyone, and I'm glad to have you here and glad to share all the things that are happening. I think it's going to be an incredibly exciting time to see all these people fly into space. So it's great.
So we did have a little poll we wanted to launch. So we had a couple of questions from the audience. So let's launch a poll and then answer the questions. And we can talk a little bit after we're done.
Thanks, Franklin.
So give it just a few more seconds so everybody gets a chance to answer. Okay, so let me end the poll, and then we'll share the results so everybody can see what.
Yeah.
So it's funny that no one wants to fly on Blue Origin. Nobody wants to sit on the end of a rocket like the good old days of.
Well, thanks for that. I'm really trying to be as unbiased as possible in presenting the two, the benefits of differences of the two methods. So I'm surprised that it went that way, but very interesting.
Well, yeah, and too, I think everybody like me, we were talking about this before we started, is that, how the question about, do you think billionaires like Branson and Bezos should be spending money on like this? But those are I think they're the pioneers that are going to help make commercial flight and commercial space flight eventually more affordable for everybody, and they're going to help build the infrastructure that makes it easy for everybody. So and there are a couple of you guys who don't want to fly into space. I don't blame you. But a lot of people still don't like flying either. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on. So you guys can't see the numbers. I thought I was sharing the poll. Did you guys see the poll results?
Yeah, if you can't, if you could buy a ticket, what would you fly on? 5 for Galactic, 0 for Blue Origin, and 2 would be no way. And then the second question, do you think billionaires like Branson or Bezos should be spending their money on this? That was 7 yes and 0 no. So that's an endorsement of that. Yeah, there has been some press lately. It says that saying that no, the billionaires should be spending their money on other things to help the Earth, and really there's some validity to that argument, and there's that goes back to even Apollo, when people were going to the moon and said, oh, you should helping to solve problems here on Earth. But I saw something Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying the other day. He says, those problems existed with or without the space program. So you really need to do the space program, and the benefits of that can only come from the space program. And really, the best way to understand Earth is from space. I mean, that's why we have GPS on our phones. That's why we get our location and directions when we're on our phone. So I think you really do need the space travel, and I think both companies are very much focused on, not just for them, but expanding things for humans all over the world.
Mm-hmm. It's an exciting time. It's nice to see that it's taken off again. So somebody who's like you, we all grew up thinking that the 2000s we were going to have a space station, just like Ray Bradbury had thought, but we're starting to get back on track. So I thank you everybody for joining us. I thank you, Ron, for being here and sharing this experience with us. And then we'll have you back again for more space programs. So to everybody, stay tuned. It's always great to have Ron here. And I thank you, Ron, for sharing this. And well, there one more question popped up, I think. Oh yeah, just another thank you. So
right.
Yeah, so we'll see you next time, and we can't wait to when you do go on your flight, we'll have you back to tell us all about it too. So.
Sure. All right, take care, everyone. Be well.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Ron.